I'd like to welcome everyone here to our presentation on YouTube. My name is Ed Zamora. I'm one of the co-founders of Principia Prep. Today we're going to be going over understanding the game of financial aid and admissions. This presentation is a two-part presentation. This is for juniors, sophomores, and freshmen in high school. If you are a senior parent of a student who's in senior year, please check out our other two videos we have on the financial aid process. Now, going into this, we're going to discuss a multitude of different things. First, we're going to talk about the college list, how to create it, what resources to utilize, and what to look for. We're going to explain how admissions affects the financial aid end and how financial aid also, in turn, affects the admissions process. We'll be discussing the differences between scholarship money and grant money, how the SATs, ACTs, and GPA play a part, and what different financial aid forms you need to fill out. Now, first we start off with, at all presentations typically done at the high school, but due to the pandemic, we're doing it this way, the cost of the colleges. Now, nationwide, typically a public university costs between $12,000 to $25,000. Here in the tri-state area, our schools are a little bit more expensive, typically ranging in cost from $14,000 up to around $40,000 a year. On the private side, unfortunately, it's the same case. Nationwide, private colleges cost between $30,000 to $44,000. Here in the tri-state area, the starting prices are typically in the 40s and range all the way up into the 60s, in some cases mid-60s. And then when you deal with the elite colleges, the higher tier schools, the dream colleges, the reach, etc., these colleges now range in the price of the low 40s into the upper 80s. To give you an idea, here we have a list of a lot of the schools that students are aware of, or parents are looking at, or families are considering. Now, you might be shocked, obviously, to see the sticker price of some of these schools in the 60s, 70s, now even the $80,000 price tags. And while the numbers are generally high, one of the biggest errors I've seen in 20 years of doing this from the admissions side of this is that parents and students research the college, find out the sticker price, and then elect not to apply to the school, which is a terrible way of doing the college list. What you really need to do is do the homework, which we're going to discuss throughout this presentation. Because even though some of these colleges cost $70,000, $80,000, $80+ a year, and you might be wondering, how can I afford this? The question so much is not what the sticker price is, but how much of that do we have to pay? The reality is the schools you see on the slide here are typically the most generous in the world, essentially, to be honest with you. So what that means is most students that apply to these colleges and attend these universities and colleges end up paying less than half the sticker price. So before you start taking schools off the list based on sticker price, let's start going through the process of figuring out, is a school generous and how generous can they be towards your family? First off, let's start off with introducing parents. Some of you here that may not know of this website. It's called collegeboard.org. Now, collegeboard.org holds a wealth of knowledge. Many of you may have already seen College Board or dealt with it through your students through either AP classes or SAT scores or those kind of scenarios. The reality is College Board is a great resource to utilize as parents, which in my 20 years of doing this, I don't see enough parents utilizing this website. The benefit of College Board is you can look up any school because every school on College Board has a profile, which means basically every school out there has a College Board profile. What you do is, as you can see here, we have a screenshot of the homepage of College Board. All you need to do is click in where it says search any college's name. This will allow you to go to the college's profile. The college's profile will give you a wealth of information. If you don't know anything about the college, you can start off with the basics. How big is the college? Is it private? Is it public? Where is it located? It will also show you what typically the requirements are at that university, from both a GPA requirement and an SAT requirement, which allows you to start building up an idea or knowledge of, is this a safety school for us? Is this a target school? Or is this a reach school? Well, we need to do more work to get into this institution. In addition, on the College Board profile, it will show you which financial aid forms this university or college need, which then essentially starts building up your knowledge of which forms you need to complete going forward. This college online profile will also introduce you to which colleges provide what's known as merit-based scholarship money, typically based on students' academics, and which schools provide only need-based aid, which typically is provided based on the family's financial ability to pay, which we're going to go throughout this presentation. Some colleges are going to find out, based on looking at their financial aid portion of their profile, are very generous, and they give both need-based money, grant money, based on students' families' financial need, as well as academic or merit-based money, which i.e. are the scholarship funds. So some schools you're going to find out only give money based on a family having financial need. I'm going to explain to you how to figure that out in this presentation. Other schools give out money only based on academics, scholarship money, or other schools provide both scholarship money and grant money to assist you. Now, that being said, with the help of College Board and obviously your guidance office, your local guidance office from the high school your students at, you should start building up the college list. Now, the college list typically has 3 sections to it. The 3 sections are safety schools, target schools, and reach schools. So what's the difference between the 3 of them? It's very simple. A safety school is typically a school that your student academically can get into very easily. A target school is a school that they have basically a 50-50 chance of getting into. So it's a very good chance you're going to get into that institution. And the reach school is typically the dream college, the one they really want to get into, but it might just be a little bit out of range because it's extremely difficult to get into school for everyone, no matter how good your academics or credentials are. Now, typically a school college list ranges anywhere from 6 to 12 colleges, couple safety, couple targets, couple reach. Now, when you're building the list, the reason that we talk about the admissions portion here, and we're considering it from a financial aid point of view, is what many families don't realize is that what you should be building your safety school portion of your list with are schools that you know will provide your student with large scholarship amounts. Since most students don't go to their safety schools, they end up going to a target or reach college in many cases, you should consider utilizing a safety or 2 of your safety portion of your list for schools that you know provide a lot of scholarship potential, which then you can leverage towards the target and reach schools to either give you more scholarship money or provide you with a scholarship. Think of it this way. If you have 3 reach schools, 3 target schools, and 3 safety schools, and each one of your safety schools have provided you with scholarship monies ranging from $15,000 to $25,000, in some cases $30,000. There are schools that do provide scholarships based on academics in the $30,000 range and above. Those are great numbers to utilize for the target schools and reach schools later on after you've been admitted and they've provided you with financial aid award letters. To go back and say, we'd love to come to your institution, this is where we want to be, but this other school has provided us with more scholarship assistance. Is there any way you can match the number or come close to it? I talk about the appeal process a little bit further on in the presentation, but these are things you should be considering while building your college list. Now, that being said, there's another component you should be utilizing to help build a list, to essentially figure out or hone down which schools fit into the safety category, the target category, and reach category based on your student's high school. Most high schools now, if not all at this point in time, have a program called Naviance. If you're unaware about Naviance, very simple, contact your student's guidance counselor and ask them, do we have Naviance? How do I access it? And how do I utilize it? One of the main considerations you should be looking at when you're using Naviance is it has a program within it called a scattergram. The scattergram allows your student to figure out, based on that specific high school where they're at, which students have been admitted and have not been admitted based on GPA and test scores. This is a good way to kind of rough draft build college lists. Between the help of College Board, the guidance office, and Naviance, this can help put together your student's college list so you feel comfortable knowing which schools are specific safeties, targets, and reaches. And once again, this is very beneficial from the financial aid point of view of trying to get money out of the colleges or utilizing one college over another with scholarship as far as leverage. Now, that being said, let's talk about the two-year colleges, something that, good, bad, or indifferent, a lot of us don't think about. The reason we have this individual on the screen, Steve Jobs, obviously one of the co-founders of Apple, is because in high school, he didn't do that well, actually. More likely because he didn't find what his passion was or his direction in life early on. And this happens to a lot of us, to a lot of students. The reason I talk about this is to explain if your student is not ready for the four-year college or has not figured out what they want to do, or academically they're not strong enough to attend a four-year institution, a community college might be the best route for them. Now, obviously, this individual didn't do very well in high school. However, he did pretty well for himself in life, which means he figured it out later on what his true passion and interests were. Your students have plenty of time. One of the reasons we talk about the community college is because sometimes this is a great stepping stone to students to utilize to get into the four-year college because academically they're not ready. In other cases, we have students that don't want to go that far. So this is a great starting point. And we also have to consider the financial aid component, especially nowadays with the cost of the colleges and everything else going on in the world. Now, when it comes to community colleges, the benefit is it allows your student to go to college, because community college is still college, at a much reduced cost. Typically what happens is your students get to choose how many classes they take. And at the community college, they get cost is done depending on how many college credits, i.e. how many classes they take. Now, the typical college here in the tri-state area will cost you somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000 a year. A community college education will cost you between $3,000 to $6,000 a year. So you can see here the difference is dramatic. Now, the benefit of going to a community college, first off, is it allows your student an easy track to get into a four-year college with reducing the cost. What I mean by easy track is the benefit of the community college is if there's any problems, either in the course load or in the student's ability to do a course, they can take it over for a fraction of the price of the four-year college. The benefit also is once your student finishes with their associate's degree, they've basically finished the first 2 years of college and gotten their associates from the community college, they can then transfer over to the four-year institution, and you've saved more than likely tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus of the cost of college from the first 2 years. Another benefit of looking at the community college is it allows your student to figure out what they want to do at a much reduced cost. Also, when your student does transfer in to the four-year college and they graduate from the four-year college and they have their bachelor's degree, at the end, during graduation, when they're handed a diploma, the diploma will just show where they got their bachelor's degree from. There will not be any asterisk or anything indicating they only were here for 2 years or 3 years because they attended community college. This is something to consider highly, specifically if your student is not mature in your eyes or is not ready for the four-year institution or to leave home, maybe, let's call it that, or if they're academically not sound enough to enter into the four-year college, or at least a four-year college they want to go to, or if you're looking at it from a cost savings perspective. So these are reasons to consider the community college throughout this entire process. Now, that being said, let's talk about the testing, SATs, ACTs, etc. Nowadays, unfortunately, based on the scenario we find ourselves in, students are not able to take the test at this point in time. So there's two ways of looking at this. If you already know your student either based on PSAT scores or practice tests with tutors or testing centers that maybe they're not going to score where they need to score, or they've already taken the test and maybe have done some tutoring, and between taking the test and tutors and everything else, the scores that you want or need for the school list you're looking for are not coming through, then it's very simple what you need to do. The next place you need to go to help build your college list is FairTestorg, the website you see now on the screen. This website here is a great place to go to because it provides over 1,000 plus colleges and universities a list of them that do not utilize or need SAT or ACT scores to be admitted to the college. Now, if you look at the website here and you log into the website, if you go down a little bit, you'll actually see the list will begin about halfway down this page of all 1,000 plus SAT, ACT optional colleges. If you are considering going SAT or ACT optional, first thing you need to do is contact the school's admissions office and ask them, will this be used against us for scholarship consideration if we do not send our test scores in? This is a very important phone call to make. That way you are under the assumption, the idea, the knowledge of, yes or no, we don't have to worry about this for scholarship funding. This is a very important phone call to make. Do not just apply through the optional SAT, not a non-SAT, ACT option without calling the school first. You want to make sure this isn't affecting the financial consideration for scholarship money. That being said, let's talk about how the admissions process works and how it affects us on the financial aid end of this. When it comes to admissions, there's a bunch of different ways to apply to the colleges, which basically break into two different camps. You have the early applications, and then you have everything else. Now, the early applications mean typically your student sends in the applications between October 15th to December 15th. Here in the tri-state area, the Northeast basically, most of our deadlines are November 1st for the early stuff. Now you have early action, restricted early action, and early decision. These are the three ways that most schools offer the early acceptance, early application process. Now the difference between the three is big. Early decision means you apply early, you get accepted early, and you have to go. So early decision is binding. Then you have early action. Early action, same scenario, you apply early, you get accepted early, but you do not have to go. And then you have a hybrid called restricted early action. Restricted early action is a little tricky in a sense that you apply early, you get accepted, but you don't have to go. However, there is an asterisk here. If you do a restricted early action, you are not allowed to do early decision anywhere. So you can apply early through restricted early action, get accepted, and not be binded, but you cannot do early decision. Now, the differences between all the different aspects of applying through the admissions office is typically early decision and restricted early action. These two categories provide an increase in acceptance percentage at most colleges that ranges from 15 to 50%. So anywhere from 15% to 50% increase in the accepted student rate based on your student utilizing one of these two. That's why a lot of families consider doing and utilizing this process of early decision or restricted early action. Now the question always pops up, well, what if we're not sure about the school financially speaking? Which brings us back to, you have to do the homework. Many of the schools that provide early decision have what's known as net price calculators. And the interesting thing is, most of the net price calculators are on the College Board site. This is why parents should be utilizing College Board. The net price calculators will provide you an idea, a very quick and easy, fast idea of what that school is able to provide you financial aid-wise speaking if you utilize their net price calculators. So if you're considering early decision or restricted early action, I suggest you go on the College Board and use the net price calculators. It will specifically show you with each of those schools you're considering doing early decision or restricted early action, how much aid you can expect. So you can figure out early on before you even apply, do we feel comfortable doing early decision or restricted early action, or do we not? Now, the other part of admissions is the regular decision process and the rolling decision process, which means you can apply a lot later on past the December and January timeframes. Now, this is one error I see that happens a lot. Sometimes students looking at the admissions process see a school that their deadline is, let's say, March 1st or April 1st. So they wait till February or March to fill out the application. They make everything, or they turn everything in on time before the deadline in March or April. But what a lot of families don't realize is, even though a school has a deadline in March or April, a lot of these schools have specific scholarship deadlines of December 1st. So if you're applying regular or rolling later on in the school year of senior year, you want to make sure by contacting admissions and asking them, I know that your deadline is February or March or April, but I just want to check. Do you have any earlier deadlines for scholarship considerations? This is extremely important because if you miss out on their deadline for scholarship consideration, some schools will not provide you scholarship funding at all. And the negative aspect of not getting scholarship funding at all means you're losing out on 4 years of funding, because the benefit of scholarship money is that money is typically guaranteed for 4 years. So make sure to check on those deadlines. Which brings us to the college visit, one of the most important parts of this entire process. And the reason it's so important is mainly because a lot of families do not utilize this the right way, or at least in my view, the right way. Now, obviously, when you go on a college tour, you'll be seeing the campus, the labs, the cafeteria, the dorm rooms. You're looking at it more along the lines of a social aspect, in a sense. Typically what happens here is the students go there looking to see what their social life will be like, their academic life, etc. Where parents go in there thinking about what kind of career opportunities is this going to provide my student later on when they graduate, the networking, the connections, etc. What most families don't do on these tours is something I'm going to tell you now, which you should do to maximize your opportunities, not only from the admissions point of view, but from the financial aid point of view. Now, the first thing you want to do is when you go to a college tour or you have one set up, contact the person in charge of the tours, whether it be admissions or financial aid, and ask them, will there be an admissions officer available for us to sit down and ask questions? Also, will there be a financial aid officer for us to sit down with as well to ask questions? If they say yes, then you want to bring these items with you. First, a copy of the student's high school transcript. Typically, the high school will give you an unofficial transcript, which is perfectly fine. Second, you want to have the student write up a resume indicating all the things they've done in high school, community service, leadership roles, any achievements, any awards, any honors, any jobs they've done. All these things should be outlined in a resume. That's the second thing you should have. The third thing you should have with you is a copy of the student's test scores. And then the fourth thing is a notepad to obviously keep down the information they provide you and questions you have that they can answer throughout the process. The reason you want to bring specifically the first three items, the transcript, the resume, and test scores, is because if you're able to sit down with an admissions officer, the benefit here is once you're sitting down with them, one of the first questions you can ask them is, here's all our information. What do you think about us from an admissions point of view? Do you think early decision is a good idea? Do you think early action is a good idea? Is rolling okay? Is regular okay? The reason you want to ask them these questions in a face-to-face scenario is because they're going to be more candid with you than they would be if you sent them an email asking the same questions with attachments, or if you call them over the phone. Face-to-face, they can be more transparent, essentially, with you. The benefit here is they'll give you great insight on where you are as far as their historic numbers of accepting students. Are you on the low end? Are you on the high end? Where do we find ourselves? And they're going to be more candid with you. The other reason this is very important, other than figuring out what's the best way to apply, is you can start asking them about scholarship money. And the reason you're asking admissions about the scholarship money is because at every college you're dealing with, almost across the board, most, if not all colleges provide scholarship funding through the admissions office. So if the college says to you, yes, you are eligible for scholarship money, and this is typically what we give, the next question you should ask is, what would we get if we increased our SAT or ACT scores? What's the next level to get more money? You're starting to inform yourselves on the cost saving part through the college tour, through the admissions office, which provides the scholarship funding. Next question you should ask, if they say, or if it's a different scenario and they say to you, unfortunately, you're not eligible for scholarship money at this point in time, you can ask them, what do we need to do to get to scholarship level? and how much money would that be? So you can inform yourself and your student about the cost savings to get yourself to that level. If you're now able to also sit down with a financial aid officer, what you want to do is you want to make sure to do that college's net price calculator on the College Board site. By doing that, you print the form out at the end. It's a PDF. It's going to show you what that college will typically give you based on your financial situation. You want to go sit down with a financial aid officer with that PDF, the net price calculator showing how much aid that school is going to give you. And you want to bring with you your latest tax return. And you want to ask the financial aid officer, essentially, I realize we haven't done any financial aid forms yet. We haven't even applied maybe, but based on your net price calculator, the numbers you see here that your school says they can provide us in grant money, because financial aid handles grant money, and based on our tax returns that you see in front of you, do you assume or do you think these numbers are correct, or at least in line with what you assume we should be receiving from the college? So during most tours, when families are looking at everything else, the classrooms, the lab, the stadiums, etc., you're gathering information about saving money from the school, from both the scholarship side, admissions, and the grant side, financial aid. This will give you a lot better insight later on as you go through the rest of the process of admissions and financial aid of where your numbers should be. You do these things to make you feel more comfortable with your safety, target, and reach colleges because you've already talked to them directly. You've shown them documentation. They've discussed with you the cost, the financial scenario that you'll find yourself in, so you feel more comfortable rather than just sending in financial aid forms and hoping things fall into place. Now, specifically from an admissions point of view, you want to make sure to get the person's card, their business card, their email, and send them a thank you note later on for taking the time to help you out. This does help in a lot of cases on the admissions side, getting your student into the college. All this put together, we're looking at discussing specifically the family dynamic, because obviously college, outside of buying your home, will probably be the most expensive thing you do in your lifetime. All these things put together, you want to sit down with your student and have an honest, candid discussion. If you know that you as a family cannot afford to pay X amount of dollars, or you can't afford to go over this budget, these are the discussions you should have with your student prior to finalizing the college list and saying, this is what we're applying to. You can even sit down with them and say, I know you love this college and it costs X amount of dollars, but we don't feel comfortable paying that much. If the college comes down to this number, we can send you. You have to think about it from this perspective. The worst thing I see in 20 years of doing this is you allow your student to apply to any single college they feel comfortable with. You take them on tours, you do the virtual tour, you do everything. You go to the open houses, they fall in love with the school, and then later on when the financial aid package comes, you realize you can't afford it. You really need to do these number crunching scenarios prior to that, and it can be done. And you have to sit down with your students, good, bad, or indifferent. You are dealing with teenagers, but in 20 years of doing this, I would say that most teenagers understand the financial landscape a lot better than parents think they do. And they do listen to you, believe it or not. So you are there to help them. Because in 20 plus years of doing this, the worst case scenario, to be honest with you, is not your student getting into an expensive college and then you take out a whole bunch of loans. The worst part is your student gets into an expensive college, they're in school for a year or two, they've assimilated to that college, they have friends, they have a life there, then something happens, as if now something has happened, the pandemic, and you can't get a loan the next year, and then you have to pull them out of that school because the loan company will not provide you loan funding. That's the worst case scenario. So from the beginning, good, bad, or indifferent, colleges are expensive. So you should be looking at all this from a financial point of view. Does the investment in this specific college at this level make sense, or does it not? And if for each family individually, that's a different discussion, but something you need to have with your student. With all these things put into place, we do have a partnership with Sallie Mae. So if you are looking for college loans, we would ask, if you wouldn't mind, if you utilize our link, which you see on the screen here, salliemae.com/smartoption/Principia prep. This actually does help our organization out dramatically. We will put a link on the bottom of the screen here as well for those watching the YouTube channel. Our partnership with Sallie Mae does provide us assistance for our organization, so it does help us out dramatically. If you are looking for a loan, we suggest, if you wouldn't mind, applying to Sallie Mae as one of the options. You can apply to more loans. I have videos just on the loan stuff as well. It's also going to be part of the discussion of the second part of this series here for juniors, sophomore, and freshman parents. But if you wouldn't mind considering Sallie Mae as one of your options, the loan link below here does help our organization out a lot. Here's our contact information. Once again, I am Ed Zamora, one of the co-founders of Principia. Every year, I help out families with the entire process of admissions, financial aid forms, etc. If you need help, if you need assistance, please do not hesitate. Give us a call or shoot us an email. Obviously, with the pandemic and everything else going on, things are a lot different than ever before. But if you need help, we are here.